Hello and welcome to the Punic Wars, the third and final lecture in this very long unit, so sorry. I'm going to focus on just the highlight details that you need to know about this conflict in order to understand the cultural stuff that comes out of it. So please don't think of this as anything approaching comprehensive. This is just the big point details you need to unravel what happens in Rome next. So the First Punic War lasts between 264 to 241 BCE, and that's almost 20-ish years. I mean, that is, let's see, yeah, that is a really long war. And this gives you an idea of just how gritty this conflict is, but also a bit of a surprise for Carthage, because Carthage is the big guy here. Rome is new, but they have no record whatsoever in naval warfare when this war kicks off. Not only that, but they don't really have a large navy. According to the Romans, they don't have a navy at all. Probably they did. They just had to build it up really, really, really fast in order to compete with Carthage. So it is kind of surprising to everyone, including Carthage, that Rome wins this conflict. This conflict is primarily fought at sea, and it begins over a dispute between Sicilian Greek colonists in Syracuse and a group of Mamertines. These are Italian mercenaries. They're not even Roman. Their territory was recently acquired by Rome. If you ask them if they're Romans, they'd probably say, no, we're Mamertines. But the Romans get on one side of this conflict, the Carthaginians get on the other side of the conflict, and then they sort of forget about the Mamertines and just go after each other for a couple of decades, as you do. Rome, at the outset, knows that it's punching above its weight, and they take this with a good deal of urgency, not the least amount of which is rooted in Rome's limited resources and manpower. Carthage has enough money to pay armies and armies of mercenaries, which is exactly what Carthage does. When they see that this war with Rome is breaking out, they call in all of their favors from their economic empire, get the best soldiers from all over the world to come fight for Carthage, and then just trust that they'll be able to afford to pay for this war. Rome is fielding mostly Italians and Italian allies, so it's Roman citizen armies and Italian allies who don't yet have citizenship or have just a limited kind of citizenship. It's complicated. We'll get into it later with the social wars. But they can't say, call for a bunch of Celts to come south of the Alps, or go call up the Ptolemies and ask for some spare elephants. They don't have that kind of street cred. They have to come up with all of their material and people from Italy, and they have to pay for it all with their money. And they're not a huge trading empire, so Rome doesn't have the bottomless pockets that Carthage does. Nevertheless, to the entire international community's surprise, Rome goes for it anyway and starts building up a fleet. According, again, to Roman historians, what they do is they capture a Carthaginian galley, and then they try to figure out how it's built, and then they copy the Carthaginian galleys and then take those to the sea, with some uneven results, as we'll discuss later. Eventually, Carthage gets into a point where they think the war is over, and they send their army home too soon and end up in this awkward position where Rome comes back, and then they have to come up with a settlement. So this is technically a Roman victory. Carthage does lose some territory, but not a ton. In many ways, Carthage just cuts its losses because, it's 241. We've spent so much money. Let's just buy our way out of the end of this war and move on. Carthage cuts costs and thinks, okay, we're done now. But we who have met Rome and stayed with her for the last 4 units or so will now know that Rome has no chill. So let's see what that looks like. Yes. So I mentioned this Carthaginian galley that Romans got a hold of and copied. We do have more information than usual about what Carthaginian galleys look like because we have found one. The shipworms I mentioned in the last lecture didn't get to this particular one. This is the Marsala Punic warship. This dates to about 241, so the end of the First Punic War. And it's got Phoenician writing on one of the planks, so we know it's a Carthaginian ship. So yay! Not only can we date the ship to a battle, it's the Battle of Lilybaeum, we can say which side it was on, the Carthaginian, and we have enough of its lower hull, so we have the keel, so that very lowest point of the ship, and part of the nose and a little bit of the stern, that we can work out a lot of details of the shape and the length and size and all that. Roman ships at this period would have looked very similar to this, with a couple of things that looked a little bit more Greek. The shape of Roman rams is more square, so it looks a little bit more like an axe head than it does like this kind of pointy skid shape. It's just a difference in philosophy on how you want to bang into other people's ships. That point is harder to engineer, but it does cause your ship to kind of skid and pivot when you ram another ship, so you do damage to them, but not as much damage to you, so clever. Good job, Phoenicians. So this is what Roman rams look like, and we're going to have to talk about them because they're going to give their name to an important landmark in the Forum. So here we're looking at several of the many, many warship rams we found in the Mediterranean. They're made out of bronze, which doesn't corrode much in seawater, so this part of the ship survives really well, so we have a lot of information about these. So the name for a ram in Latin is a rostrum. The plural is rostra. And rostrum is a word you may be familiar with. When you get up to speak, that thing that you stand behind is a rostrum. So this is going to be an explanation of what? Why do we call that a rostrum? Oh, we're going there. This particular rostrum is nifty in that it's still got some of the wood from the keel beam attached to it. You can see the bolts going through the keel beam. So this bronze was bolted heavily onto the front of your ship. And in naval warfare, what you were trying to do was to bang your ship into the enemy's ship hard enough to break their hull, but not hard enough to get yourself stuck. So you'd be making these little skid maneuvers where you wouldn't want to T-bone the other ship. Rather, you'd try to do a glancing blow like the Titanic and the iceberg and kind of across their side. This would cause them to be difficult to navigate. You'd break the oars on the one side and then you could board and then capture the ship or sink them, one or the other. Now, Romans, because they were really into capturing the ships, there are two ways to win in a naval war. Either you sink the ships, they go to the bottom of the sea, boom, they're gone, or you do the technically more difficult thing, which is you disable the ship, you get your people onto the ship, you board it, you take it over, and then you've captured the ship. That was the thing that you brag on. And Romans would take the ram off of the ship they'd captured and towed it back to the Roman Forum, where they nailed them onto the speaker's platform, which is what we're about to look at here. So on the edge of the Comitium, I'm sure you recall, is this round place in front of the Senate House. So the Senate's back in here. The Comitium, which is the open-air meeting and voting place, is here. And then on the edge, opposite the Senate, there's this raised area. We're looking at a reconstruction of it here. And this was called the rostra. You'll notice it's the plural, not the rostrum. So when we speak today, we speak at a rostrum. The Romans called it the rostra because all of the rams that they'd captured, starting in the Punic War, they would nail up to the side of their speaker's platform, so that when you're standing up here to deliver your speech, it's stick Roman. There you go. They're speaking up there. You'd be standing above a row of captured ship beaks. So this is one of the sources we've used to reconstruct this. This is a coin showing the speaker's platform, the rostra. And up at the top, you see this little seat bench here. So that was regularly set up for the MC, and then they would call up different speakers. You're going to see that in the docudrama too. So the rostrum and the speaker's platform and the president's seat are all going to be up there. I don't think you can see the rams really well in any of the film shots, but keep an eye out for them. If you screenshot it, I will admire. Okay. Here's one more reconstruction. So this is another possible way this thing could have looked. This is a reconstruction of the Imperial Forum, and this has slightly more rostra because it's from a later period, so they've got more. Romans would also do this in war memorials for naval battles. They'd get as many rostra as they could and then stick it on the front. It's a little bit like, taking the deer carcass you just hunted for and putting it on the front of your car. It's a flex. So this is what the rostra looks like today. All of the marble cladding was stripped off and all of the bronze was taken away and melted down to make, amongst other things, this canopy covering the papal seat on the Vatican. The Borgias. The Borgias melted a lot of bronze that I really would have rather they hadn't. But at any rate, here it is. This is really high up. So the first layer here, you can see where the brick and the concrete was poured to make the different levels. So about here at the bottom is one Dr. Jones Lewis worth of height. So this is very, very tall. The next innovation, and this was the Romans' answer to naval warfare scenarios in which they were really outmatched. So the Carthaginians had been ramming their ships into people for centuries by the time the Romans are showing up to this fight. The Carthaginians are better at ramming other ships than the Romans are. Just objectively, even the Romans notice this. But what the Romans know they're very good at are land battles. They've gotten incredibly clever about small unit maneuvers in land battles. So what they try to do here is turn a naval battle into a land battle so they have a hope of being useful. And the way they do that is by inventing this machine. So this is called a Corbus, which is the Roman word for a raven. You've probably heard corvid if you're familiar with bird biology. That's this word. So it's a raven or crow. So there's the tip of its little beaky beak. And it's mounted on a mast that is attached to the decking of the ship with ball bearings. So this entire assembly rotates 365 around, and this crane lifts the very, very heavy boarding ramp here. So you use the crane to lift and ready this platform. You aim it at the closest ship. So maybe this is a ship. This is an unlikely angle. They're T-boning here, which is not a great angle. Probably you're going to want to set up. So you've got an enemy ship here. You want to kind of bring your ship alongside here and then try to lower your Corbus like this, kind of an H shape there. So you go up to the enemy ship and then you release the trigger on the crane. This rope and pulley system release. The boarding ramp bangs down into the enemy's ship, and then the spike on the bottom acts like a nail, and it into the hull decking, or rather, just the decking. Then you send your land unit across the boarding ramp onto the other ship, where you proceed to have a land battle, which you're actually good at. This idea works really well when it's debuted at the Battle of Mylae, and it comes as a bit of a shock to the Carthaginians that anybody would be nuts enough to try this, because once you've deployed this thing, you have effectively attached your ship to somebody else's ship, which means that if the battle doesn't go well, you're still attached to their ship. If the other ship is damaged, it's also in the process of sinking, which can cause your ship to capsize. It's top-heavy. This is not the first time boarding ramps are used in naval warfare. That's the spike on the bottom and the crane pulley system that's the nifty new thing. So this works really well until the Romans get stuck in a storm at sea. So when the Corbus first comes out onto the stage, the Romans begin winning a lot of battles, and so they decide, oh, great, awesome. Let's just forget all of this island hopping shit. Let's get onto our boats, let's sail to Carthage, and let's attack Carthage. So they do that. Only, while their entire fleet is parked off the coast of North Africa, a storm blows in, and because the Romans have put the Corbus assembly on the top of all of their ship deckings, and if you look at this, this is the Corbus when it's undeployed. So even when it's folded all the way down, it's very high on the ship's decking. The water level is here. The top of the ship is here. If, say, a wave smacks sideways into this boat, or if the wind blows a little too aggressively, this boat is going to flip. It's going to capsize. And then it's going to sink into the ocean and drown because it's got all of this stuff on the top decking. In many ways, this is a bit of a newbie mistake, and probably why the Carthaginians were like, dudes, what are you doing? Because entire fleets are regularly lost in ancient Mediterranean warfare. But one of the big contributing factors is if the warships have too much stuff on the decking. That's always your temptation, right? You want to bring more machines of war into your fight. The more weapons you have in your boat, the better. But the more stuff you have above the waterline, the heavier your boat is, and the more unstable and thus. So Rome's entire first fleet blows over and sinks into the sea. So they build a second fleet, and that fleet gets caught in a sea storm, and then it falls over. And Rome at this point is out of money. And at this point, Carthage is like, okay, we have spent a lot of money on this stupid war. We beat the Romans off of our shores. They've built 2 fleets from scratch. Both of those fleets are gone. They're out of money. There is no way in heck they're going to be able to come back from this. And we're spending like buckets of money every day on this army that we're keeping out here for what now? So the Carthaginian Senate votes to disband their mercenary troops, to send them home, to stop paying the mercenaries. It's an economic decision. Not all of the Carthaginians are on board, though. There's this one dude named Hamilcar Barca who is alert to the threat that Rome poses. Hamilcar realizes that Rome is aggressive, Rome is dangerous and determined, and Rome has a lot of skin in this game. Rome can't afford to lose this war. So Hamilcar's like, dudes, what are you doing? No, don't send the troops home until you're absolutely sure that Rome has surrendered. And they're like, yeah, no. So Carthage sends its troops home. Meanwhile, Rome gets all of the women in the city of Rome to donate their jewelry to a massive pot that they stretch to build a third fleet. And this third fleet sails to Carthage, and Carthage has sent its army home. And they're like, what? You built a third fleet? Where did you get the money? And they're like, my wife had jewelry. We pawned it, which is exactly what they did. And later, the women of Rome come back and they're like, hey, we bought your fleet, so maybe we should get some more rights. It's a lovely moment. We'll talk more about that later. So Carthage is forced to sign a surrender, which they do. They agree to pay war damages, and they agree not to make war on Rome for a defined period of time. And they think, okay, yeah, this was embarrassing, but you know, look, it happens. This is how treaties work. We'll just make a deal with Rome, we'll pay them off, and then we'll all be friends again, and it'll be good. And by then, we'll have sold them so much purple dye, they'll forget that they hate us now. And Hamilcar's like, guys, Rome's not going to play like that. Rome's going to come and kill you, and we need to get like more colonial lands and a stronger military force in place in order to deal with Rome. So Hamilcar takes his kids and goes to Spain, where he begins to directly conquer and take possession of large portions of Spanish real estate, making it Carthaginian colony territory. And Hamilcar you may not know, but you've probably heard of his son, Hannibal Barca. This is that Hannibal. There are a lot of Carthaginians named Hannibal. It's a really common name. It's like the Bob of Carthage. But Hannibal is going to be the main protagonist in our next edition of this film franchise nobody in the Mediterranean asked for, the Punic Wars 2. Okay, so Punic War, deuce. At the end of the First Punic War, Carthage lost everything you see here in green. So originally Carthage had Sardinia, Corsica, and Sicily. Rome gets that in the treaty settlement. But in the next few years, as Carthage is avoiding directly attacking Rome, they're colonizing large portions of Spain. So Carthage loses the green areas, but gets the orange areas. Simultaneously, Rome is involved in a series of squabbles overseas with various Greek city-states, so Rome is pretty busy for the next few years. In 219 BCE, so this is right on the edge of the Second Punic War, this line along the Ebro River Valley here is beginning to heat up because Roman presences in southern, what is now France and northern Spain, the Pyrenees adjacent areas, has begun to heat up a little bit. Rome is beginning to muck around in the local politics of Spain, and Carthage doesn't appreciate Rome mucking about in the local politics of its new colonies. And rather than attack at the place of conflict in Spain, Hamilcar Barca's son Hannibal decides instead to just cut out the middleman to do what Rome did and go right for Rome. So Hannibal, with some elephants, famously nice elephants. These are Carthaginian-sourced elephants. So these are North African forest elephants, likely brought over the Atlas Mountains through a passage here-ish. But they also might have come through the North Atlantic Sea route this way. Either or, African elephants and their elephant drivers were a big thing Carthage had going for it. Also a big thing, because elephants, they're so cute. Smushy, trunky faces. So, Hannibal marches right over the Romans who are hanging out in this territory. It's not yet a Roman colony state, though. And then he kind of sneakily marches his army over the Alps, south into Italy, straight for Rome. And Rome takes this about as well as you might imagine Rome taking this. So this is 218 BCE, Hannibal's in the Alps. Rome sends out a bunch of armies that start to lose. And indeed, here's the Second Punic War. Here's Hannibal. Hi, Hannibal. Poor Hannibal. Awesome dude, Hannibal. So this goes to 201-ish BCE, 218 to 201. So this is another longish war. In the beginning, everything's coming up Hannibal. He makes some first strikes on Roman territory. Rome's army is losing badly. And this leads Romans to argue amongst themselves as to the best way to deal with Hannibal. But that's not the only thing going on in Rome at this period. So 218, Hannibal invades. In 214, so 4 years later, Rome gets embroiled in the First Macedonian War. So the First Macedonian War is happening at the same time as the war with Carthage. So Rome is doing the thing that you're never supposed to do, which is fight a war on two fronts. This is a really bad example of why you shouldn't do that, though, because it works out really well for Rome this time. Like, sometimes you do what you got to do. World War II would be another example of this working out kind of okay. Also for it not working out okay, because Hitler starts a war on two fronts, and that was stupid. Hitler's stupid. It's my official historian position. Okay, so this means that Rome is spread very thin fighting against Hannibal, and therefore it's a little bit of a surprise that Hannibal and Carthage does not win this war. So why? What goes wrong? Well, so this is the attack range of the First Punic War. Hannibal and his brother Hasdrubal, so the purple arrow here is his brother Hasdrubal. So there's a second Carthaginian wave behind Hannibal, but that wave doesn't go quite as well. He ends up dying in Metaurus. But Hannibal continues to march through Italy. Interestingly, he dodges around Rome and goes into the south. because part of what Hannibal's relying on is that all of these disgruntled Italians who are sick of fighting for Rome will jump up and fight on Carthage's side. So he's trying to make friends, especially with Greek-speaking colony states in southern Italy, just like Pyrrhus did. And it doesn't go as well for him as it might have. Also, Carthage doesn't send him regular supply updates and help like it should. So Hannibal's own government serves him very poorly in this engagement. But he's also up against some creative strategy on the part of the Romans. And this brings us to our next dramatis personae. Allow me to introduce Quintus Fabius, Maximus Cunctator. So Quintus Fabius is the name he has when all of this starts out. He comes up with this novel new strategy, which is, let's irritate the hell out of Hannibal instead of fighting him in a battle. So he noticed that every time Rome had tried to engage Hannibal so far, Rome ends up getting the snot kicked out of it and losing a lot of people it can't afford to lose. So Quintus Fabius starts acting like he's going to show up to a battle. He'll let Hannibal know where he and his army are, and he'll make like he's about to engage them, and then on the next day, Hannibal and his army wake up and they proceed to attack at dawn, only to find that Quintus Fabius left. And now Hannibal has to go chase Quintus Fabius and figure out where the Roman army is. And then Quintus Fabius just keeps repeating this. Instead of joining battle, he keeps faking Hannibal out and making Hannibal chase him. This does not make him popular in Rome. His political enemies come up with a nickname for him, Cunctator, which is Latin for the procrastinator. This is a story about the virtues of procrastination. So they're saying, Quintus Fabius, why don't you just fight Hannibal already? We need a victory. What are you doing, dude? You're making us look bad. And Quintus Fabius is like, yeah, because we'd lose. Just, be willing to look silly for a while, because Hannibal's getting tired and his elephants are dying slowly. So let's just, do this for a while. I swear it'll work. And the Roman Senate eventually is like, nah, we're getting teased in the cafeteria. The Greeks think we're being funny. We can't do this anymore. We need to have a direct battle. And Quintus Fabius, thank you so much for your service, but we're going to call in somebody else. So Rome puts together a whole new army. So they go out and conscript a bunch of young dudes, which they kind of have to do because by then they've lost a bunch of people fighting Hannibal. They're ramping up to the next Macedonian War, the First Macedonian War, so it's their first engagement with the Hellenistic kings in the East. So they get fresh-faced youths without a lot of training, and they put them under the command of the two consuls that year, Paulus and Varro. And this is meant to be a prestige move, right? The consuls are the co-presidents, so this is as high profile as it can get. But also, one of those consuls didn't have a lot of military experience. And also, putting two people in charge of a battle has not always been the most successful way to go about crisis management decision-making. You can ask Patton and, what was the British dude's name? Not McKinley. Yes, well, I'm not a World War II historian, you can tell now. But yeah, one general at a time is the best rule. So let's see how that worked out for them. Allow me to introduce you to Cani. This is one of the most famous dies atra. It's a dies atra, so this is a dark day on the Roman calendar. This is treated by Romans the same way we treat Pearl Harbor Day and 9/11. This is a bad anniversary. Because if you look out onto the plain, you'll notice it's very, very flat. It's a silty river bottom. So when Hannibal saw the Roman army marching up and getting ready to fight on this plain, he's reported to have said, I can't believe they're doing this. Do they want to lose? Are they legit just doing this right now? Because that's stupid. And indeed, it was that stupid. So the Roman army, in its maniples, staggers itself out across the field. Draw in some staggered maniples here. Hannibal and the Carthaginians put up a counter formation that is a little bit ragged. I think I've got a map of this on the next page. So let me go there. Okay, I didn't have a map there. So Romans are arrayed in their nice staggered maniples, like so. And the Carthaginians, meanwhile, form their phalanx lines in a reverse U-shape. And as the Romans move forward, the Carthaginians retreat in the middle but hold the ends of their lines, but the Romans can't see that's happening because they're looking across out over a flat plain, so they can't see distance very well, especially across the scale of a battle line, so they don't notice that the Carthaginian lines are slowly bowing in at the center and swallowing them whole. Now, meanwhile, the maniples get smushed together, so they start like log jamming. So the Romans get stuck. They can't maneuver. The Carthaginians surround them. The Carthaginian cavalry comes up on their back, and essentially at that point it's a mopping up operation. The Carthaginians swallowed the Roman legions whole, and both of the consuls die. So on the 2nd of August 216 BCE, the co-presidents die, and an entirely newly recruited set of legions die. A lot of Roman cavalry, which Romans can't afford to lose cavalry because they don't have a ton of it in the first place, they're gone. The Romans suffer just massively damaging losses. So, why didn't Hannibal win the Second Punic War? Because it's looking like pretty grim right now. Well, this has to do with a few people. We're going to start with an old face. So remember Quintus Fabius, the procrastinator, the delayer, cunctator? Yeah, Rome apologized to him. They're like, okay, sorry, you were right about not directly engaging Hannibal. That went really poorly. Could you come back? So Quintus Fabius comes back and he's like, yeah, I've got a new name now, the Procrastinator. That's what you're calling me from now on, because it's a badge of honor, because it's working, goddammit. So when you think of procrastination, say my name. So that's why he's Cunctator, and also why he's Maximus. Maximus means the greatest. So this is Quintus Fabius, the greatest procrastinator in the history of history. And that's what I meant by I'm making a case for procrastination here. Sometimes waiting a little bit to do a better job is a really great life strategy. We should destigmatize procrastination just a little bit, because sometimes you are not ready, and that's okay. It's important to be able to say, not ready today. You're going to be doing it for the rest of your life. At any rate. So not only is Quintus Fabius brought back into the ring, but another Roman general named Scipio Africanus, although he's not called Africanus yet, that comes later, he takes his Roman legions, and instead of engaging Hannibal on Italian ground, he instead sails to Spain and starts pecking away at Carthaginian colonies in Spain. He, in effect, makes it a two-front war for Hannibal. So now Hannibal isn't just, like, invading Italy, he also has to, like, send people back to Spain to put out fires in his colony. So while all of this is going on, Carthage... No, actually, let me tell this another way. So eventually, the Romans have made enough inroads in Spain that they then send this Scipio guy down to Carthage itself. So he picks up and he takes his now veteran army from Spain to Carthage right outside the city, at which point the Carthaginian Senate is like, oh shit, Hannibal, you've got to come back and save us. And Hannibal's like, well, you couldn't have sent me, like, more funding? No. Okay, fine, dudes, fine. So Hannibal picks up from Italy, sails back to Carthage, and then fights the Battle of Zama. Even at this point, Carthage has home turf advantage. They've got Hannibal home in time. They've got a fantastic army. They've trained some local Carthaginian forces now. So this still doesn't look like a disaster endgame scenario for Carthage. And they're not forgetting that Rome is still fighting a war. Actually, no, by now Rome is done with its war in Macedon, which they've just won. Oh well. But yeah, so Carthage isn't as worried as it should be, is my point here. At this point, Scipio uses the diplomatic lessons he's learned in Spain. So one of the two strategies that Scipio took when he grabbed Spain's provinces out from under Carthage was, yeah, he used some military force, but also he'd roll up on an area and be like, oh no, I'm not going to charge taxes that are as high as Carthage's, and oh, thank you for bringing me like your noble women, but I'm actually not going to sleep with them. That's fine. You can keep your ladies. I'm just here because, you know, like Rome doesn't play like that. Rome is a fantastic boss to work for, and we're actually going to improve your life and win your hearts and minds. And it does quite work. So then Scipio goes to King Massinissa of Numidia. Now, I mentioned Numidia in Lecture B. Numidia is the immediate African indigenous neighbors of the Carthaginians, and they're intermarried with the noble houses of Carthaginians, so this isn't like a neat split. But King Massinissa is the king of Numidia. He's a staunch ally of Carthage when this starts out, so much so that he's engaged to a Carthaginian lady named Sophonisbaal, or Saphanabaal. I can say it better in Latin. I'm more used to it in Latin. Sophonisba. So he's apparently very fond of Sophonisba, but it is a political union. If he marries her, he's stuck with Carthage. But if he breaks up with her and starts dating Rome, then he can get a better deal from the Romans. So he negotiates like, okay, what I want from you is to make sure that the Carthaginians will never make us pay taxes again and keep them out of our land and also give us perks and make us your preferred trading partners. And oh, also like, we want to have a study abroad program. All of these things. Hold on a second. All right, sorry. Tethys was getting a little bit too enthusiastic about her furball. Okay, where were we? Right, Massinissa, broken engagement. Right. So King Massinissa switches sides. He rage quits the Carthaginians. He joins the Romans. So at the Battle of Zama, Hannibal looks out to see that on one side is the Roman cavalry, on the other side, oh god, it's the Numidians. It's freaking Massinissa. And this is what ends up eventually clinching the Battle of Zama. Also, the Romans have gotten very good at dealing with elephants. They just like move their maniples so the elephants can run through them, and then they like unsquinch and then continue to fight, and then the elephants are gone and they're peace out. And who can blame them, really? But this ends up leading to a personal tragedy for Massinissa. This is really a story that encapsulates all of the no-win scenarios that people are going to begin to face in the world of Roman imperialism. So, Scipio, once he's won the Second Punic War, begins to capture high-profile Carthaginians because he wants to put them into chains and take them on his triumphal procession through the city of Rome. A humiliating thing for the kings that is also going to end in their ritual murder, so a very difficult thing to face. And Massinissa is watching this happen to all of his former allies, including his ex-fiancée, Saphanabaal. So she is amongst the captured. And then Massinissa goes to Scipio and he says, dude, please don't parade my girlfriend through the streets of Rome and ritually murder her. Like, bro code, come on. And Scipio's like, sorry, buddy, she's an upper-class Carthaginian. This is my job. I gotta do what I gotta do. Like, you've been an awesome new ally. Thanks for the cavalry, but sorry. Look, I'll get you a Roman girlfriend. Massinissa is like, eh. So now he's faced with a bunch of difficult and contradictory options, and none of them great. So he can't get his girlfriend out of Roman prison. He can't get her a free life. He can't get her a viable future. But the one thing he can do is he can save her from humiliation before she dies. So he smuggles poison to her, and she ends up taking her own life in order to stick it to the Romans and avoid an even worse death. So this isn't suicide in the sense of someone having a terminal case of depression. Here we're talking about forced suicide for political reasons. And that I find even more horrifying on a number of levels, because we talk about this like it's a choice, and it's kind of not. I mean, what your choice is to be ritually humiliated and murdered, or ritually humiliated, then sold into enslavement, or taking your own life. Like, none of these are good choices, and none of them are more or less praiseworthy or blameworthy. But this does underline the deal that Massinissa realizes that he's made a little bit too late. His new bro just put him in a position where he had to poison his ex he still loved. And that is well and truly effed up. Stop. Okay, so I'm not done yet. Astute observers will notice that there is a third Punic War. This is the last one. And this is the one that the docudrama I'm having you watch before Quiz 2 kicks off with. So the third Punic War starts in 151 BCE, but it's really heated up between 149 and 146 BCE. And most of that span of years is the final end game death throes around the city of Carthage. Because at this point, Carthage does not have a bunch of territory, it doesn't have a bunch of wealth. They've paid so much money in war reparations to Rome right now that Rome is rolling in money, Carthage not so much. Also, Carthage is no longer allowed to have allies, and one of the really punitive clauses in the Punic War II settlement was that Carthage isn't allowed to declare war on anyone without asking Rome for a permission slip. And wouldn't you know, Rome really doesn't like signing Carthage's permission slips. Numidia is now Rome's new best friend. Numidia, you will notice, has gotten quite big because Rome has been backing them and sending them extra troops so that Rome can borrow its cavalry once in a while. So this didn't work out great for Massinissa, but it did work out okay in the short term for Numidia. So Numidia starts beating up on Carthage. Carthage writes to Rome like, guys, Numidia's attacking us. Can we go to war with them, please? And Rome is like, nah, we like Numidia. We don't like you, no. So eventually Carthage starts fighting back, and Rome's like, you broke the treaty, man! You're doing this to yourself. And Carthage is like, dude, are you ever chill? And Rome's like, no. So the other thing that leads directly to the Third Punic War, because I've made it sound like all Romans really wanted to destroy Carthage. Not all Romans, though. There was a healthy group of Romans who were like, you know, there is enough room in the Mediterranean for us and a healthy Carthage, and we don't need to waste this many men and materials, like laying siege to Carthage. That's going to be really costly, and we've got other stuff to be doing right now, so, like, maybe not. But there was one Roman politician who made it his mission in life to get Carthage wiped off the face of the planet. Let's meet him. Well, actually, we're not going to look at a picture of him. Instead, I'm showing you my cat, Cato. Cato the Censor was interesting dude. So he himself was not from the city of Rome. He was the first in his family to get involved in Roman politics, but he was super successful. And he was big into this platform of keep Rome Roman. In other words, he believed that Romans shouldn't speak Greek, they should speak Latin, and that Latin literature was important, and he did write some Latin literature. We're going to read it for this unit. So Cato's on agriculture, that's this author. So this same guy wrote the handbook that we'll be reading on how to run a Roman plantation. And I'm using the word plantation rather than villa quite deliberately, because plantation is what we're talking about. We're talking about a large factory farm run by enslaved labor remotely by an absentee owner, which is what Cato is talking about. All of the people he mentions managing, including this really creepy moment where he's like, get the housekeeper a wife and make sure she da-da-da-da. What he's talking about is make your enslaved people be a couple and then run your farm together, which is skeevy. Oh, Cato. My cat is much nicer, but he's still kind of a crank. So at any rate, the only thing that Cato hated worse than Greeks was Carthaginians. He thought that Carthage was a clear and present danger to Rome, and that as long as Carthage continued to exist, Rome always had to fear for its existence. So he started an irritation campaign where at the end of every speech, no matter where, no matter what it was about, he always ended the speech with, "Oh yeah, also, I think that Carthage has to be destroyed." So, like, his best friend's wedding. Here's to the happy bride and groom. And by the way, Carthage must be destroyed. Like, speeches in the Senate. By the way, Carthage must be destroyed. And then he also had, like, these comedy routines. Like, at one point, he was on the Senate floor with this fig, and he was like, on the fig. And then the senators are like, "Okay, I'll bite. Cato, why are you eating that fig?" And he's like, "It's a nice fig, isn't it? Really fresh, isn't it? Look how squishy. Do you want to know where this fig comes from?" And the senators, "Okay, Cato, where does the fig come from?" "Carthage. This morning. That's right, Carthage is close enough that they can sail over in a day, long enough for the figs to still be fresh. Carthage must be destroyed." So finally, through a combination of the Numidia incident and the Senate just being sick of Cato badgering them, they decided, "Okay, fine, Third Punic War. We'll do it, Cato. We'll do it, okay?" And then Cato, like, dies happy. He doesn't even live to see the end of the Third Punic War, but I guess he'd had faith. Bless his heart. My cat is a much nicer person than Cato the Censor. But my cat is also prone to attacking people for no reason, so, you know, it's apt. I love him, though. One way or the other, at any rate, Carthage fell, was sacked, and was then liquidated. So every human being they could get a hold of who wasn't dead was trafficked, and that labor went to the Italian countryside farms owned by Roman one-percenters. So wealthy Romans became even wealthier. So people like Cato and his heirs now had all of these new slaves coming from North Africa, from a culture that was known, along with navigational expertise, for agricultural expertise. So Carthaginians invested heavily in agroscience. And with the fall of Carthage, Rome got a hold of Carthaginian agroscience treatises. So they're not just enslaving labor, they're also enslaving agricultural managers, farm managers, growth technicians. They're bringing new strains of grain. So there's this huge influx that benefits only people who can afford to buy the enslaved labor and use the translated knowledge and also invest in these new plants and stuff. For the people whose relatives were fighting for Rome, who owned a small family farm, a lot of those soldiers came back to find that their small family farm had been foreclosed on because wealthy Romans had started grabbing up little family farms and putting them into their giant factory farms. So the plantation system existed through the exploitation of lower class Romans by upper class Romans. So there's exploitation on a number of levels going on here. And this creates a double bind for poor Romans. They're coming back from increasingly long stays in the army to find themselves homeless, out of money. They weren't allowed to traffic large numbers of people from the campaign they just fought. Not that, like, that's ever good. But this massive industrialized human trafficking operation that happened in the wake of the Second Punic War is not something that everybody in the army is benefiting from. Mostly we're talking about the officers and above, and those are people from these wealthy upper class families. Patricians mainly, but also plebeian families who have enough wealth by now through their political access. And this means that there are a lot of desperate homeless people in Rome trying to find work, trying to get enough food to feed their families, and not able to succeed, which creates a lot of social turmoil and unrest. We're about to go into a period that we refer to as the crisis of the 1st century BCE. It's a crisis because it's like 2021, only it lasts for 100 years. It's back-to-back civil war and uprisings and more civil war and also some foreign wars. And then, like, military dictators. It's just very, very bad and unstable. So, although this may sound like a win for Rome, we need to ask ourselves which Romans are winning Are they winning long term? Because a lot of these Romans who are winning now end up being killed in political purges within a couple of generations. You know, more money is not necessarily the best thing for a nation state. It certainly didn't seem to help Carthage in the long run, and nor is it helping Rome out much here either. A fact that was not lost on the Romans, by the way. So here is all of the territory that Rome got by the end of the Punic War. So in 146, Rome had not only absorbed everything in orange, but also the bits in purple, including the coast of the Adriatic and mainland Greece. So the other thing that's going on at the time of the Third Punic War, Third Punic War is the Second Macedonian? Where's the Fourth Macedonian? I think it's the second. Anyway, there's another Macedonian war going on in the middle of this, which gives Rome eastern territory. And this isn't even counting then the land donated by Attalus III, so they also get a little bit of Anatolia here. So Rome has gone from just an Italian power to suddenly the biggest imperial power in the region. Bigger than what's left of Alexander's empire. At this point, you just have the Seleucids a little bit, and the Ptolemies are holding on in Egypt, so good job, Ptolemies. But this is unprecedented, and this leaves a lot of the Mediterranean in shock, because nobody expected Rome to succeed at this. Least of all Rome in some ways. This is also a story about Rome failing to anticipate the fallout from their quick gains. You know, kind of like a compulsive overeater, or Rome continues to stuff provinces down its gullet until it ends up, you know, groaning on the toilet of history. Oh gosh. And yeah, this is where I leave you guys. At the year 146 BCE. Rome, in many ways, has never been better. It's never had a more successful military or a larger one. It's never controlled so much land. It's never had so much wealth, so much access to grain. Food insecurity should be a thing of the past. Spoiler, it's not. It gets worse. It gets a lot worse. Rome's population swells beyond the ability of Italian farming to provide for it, which means that there's a starvation crisis on too. And Rome's already existent class issues are about to flare into outright civil war in the next few years. And the canary in the coal mine of all of this is going to be Gaius Gracchus, which is what the docudrama is about. But before we go there, we're going to pause for a minute and enter the world of Roman comedy. So this is the time within which Plautus is writing his plays. The play that we're going to read, if I remember correctly, it dates to about the end of the Second Punic War, so it's a little bit earlier than this, but still, like the early 100s BCE. And it tells us not only about what Romans thought was funny, but also the kinds of collective trauma that Rome and Romans are processing. And here I'm using Roman in the most inclusive sense. This includes people who have been enslaved by Rome recently, or even not so recently. People who are suddenly finding themselves included by force in an empire they didn't particularly ask to join. Some people looking from the outside in, and a lot of the victims of this new economic order grappling with the new reality facing them in an urban city. So, on that note, be well, take care. You have survived this giant info dump of a unit. A little bit calmer next time. Later, taters. Peace out.